Hello, everyone, and welcome to Jaynky to the Max, a podcast where we talk about awesome projects and the even cooler creators who make them. Today on the podcast, we have prolific space blogger, Hanss. I'm glad he could be here today. And before that, we got a few things. First off, we always record all these episodes live in the server, so hop on at 10 a.m. PST. Also, we're in the middle of a game jam, so I guess I don't have anything. I'm so used to saying giving an announcement for that. I'm like, oh wow. Of course,
we're in the middle of it now.
Studio is my fantastic co-host Glavin.
Hello, welcome everybody to the show.
All right, so tell us a bit about yourself, Hanss. You're a financial analyst at SpaceX. Kind of like get a little bit of your journey, how you got here.
Yeah, of course, I'd love to. Thanks for having me, guys. So as you mentioned, my name is Hanss. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. Went to UT Austin, graduated with a degree in finance in 2018. And I started working actually at an investment bank in New York called Evercore. I did that for a year and a half, working on mergers and acquisitions. And then a couple months ago, I got the call for my dream job. I applied for SpaceX to be a financial analyst, and I got hired. So I started in December, and I've definitely been loving every bit of it. It's a bit of a change of pace from what I used to do in New York, but it's extremely meaningful, and I'm super happy to do it. I'm super happy to be here. Definitely been a lifelong space fan, so being able to put space and finance together is kind of a merger of my two life passions.
You're a huge space nerd. That's coming from a space nerd right here. So, what are some of the things that you are most excited about that you see in the near future in the space sector?
Yeah,
like what?
I really, as someone who works for SpaceX, I think one of the most exciting things is to see the growth in the commercial aspect of the space industry. For many decades, right, since the founding of NASA and the space age, a lot of what's been done is just, governments shelling out huge, expensive contracts to a couple contractors without any real competition. But now we're seeing, the beginnings of a real space economy where private enterprises can compete according to free market enterprise and, compete for the lowest cost. And I think that that's going to be crucial to opening up space for the larger percentage of the population. And I think that we have a lot of opportunity in that space to really bring down costs.
Yeah, no, and that's huge. Especially, one of the things is, I think our first guest for this series that we're doing on space, with the advent of a commercial, is paved the way for it's brand new but open source space technology for small sats, and hopefully it'll go bigger as time progresses. But yeah, no, that is a huge thing. Very happy about. What about some problems, some hurdles? What do you think might get in the way of advancing more into space?
Yeah, I think one piece of the space ecosystem that people haven't paid as much attention to and definitely need to is governing the rights of private enterprises with assets in space. So what I mean by that is, the basis of space law is the famous 1967 Outer Space Treaty signed by multiple nations, including the U.S. One of the stipulations was that it governed that no nation can claim, a part of space for themselves. So, for example, Neil Armstrong can't claim the Sea of Tranquility for the United States. But that treaty did not envision the rise of space enterprises, right? So, 50 years later, if a company goes and claims an asteroid for itself for mining, is that legal, right? So that's a hurdle that people have to figure out. And it may require revisions to the Outer Space Treaty. In fact, just a week or two ago, President is explicitly encouraging American companies to utilize space resources, which, I think is a step in the right direction, but, could of course upset other actors in the space industry like China and Russia. So that's something that has to be figured out before we can truly, monetize space.
Yeah, I never thought of that, but that is so true, because you need to have a governing body to be able to enforce these rules, and without that there, then yeah, it's kind of the Wild West of.
It sure is. That's exactly a good way to put it.
So exciting. So how? I mean, one of the things I really liked about your story is that you're a financial analyst, right? You're not like a a STEM guy. You aren't an engineer. But you're still worked your way into the space industry. I know. I find that really cool. What are some other like aspects do you think that are often overlooked in the space field that don't require like the engineering or the classical approach, if you will?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. So, I think that, especially for a space company, right, the business aspect is going to be every bit as important as the actual engineering. So, you're absolutely right. I have no formal engineering background. All my math and science that I do is either self-taught or dates back to high school when I write my blog, which is kind of funny. My AP chemistry teacher would be proud. But other fields that are, I think, just as important to the development of the space economy is one that I think is super important is supply chain management. So one of my best friends from middle school actually also works at SpaceX. He works for the Starlink division in Seattle, and his major was supply chain management. Because if you think about it, the engineers are not able to build their stuff if there's not a vast logistics team to make sure that everything is shipped to the right point at the right time, and at the lowest cost, right? And that's an important thing to consider, eliminating this kind of inefficiency, so that the engineers can do their work. So that's one there. SpaceX has a good marketing team, right? They do a good job of getting the word out, generating interest.
And they have a great naming team. Like whoever comes up with the names of them, oh my goodness, it's makes me so happy.
And then we even just talked about law, right? So these are all non-STEM fields that are going to be crucial for the development of the space economy.
Yeah, one of the themes of this podcast is that there's a lot more to the space industry than like rocket science, and like, because we have all these predefined notions of what space should be like, and
the reality of it really comes down to being a little bit different than what people initially think of.
Yeah, for sure. People don't imagine that an investment banker could be a big space nerd too. Exactly.
Yeah. It's kind of one of the things I'll kind of learn when getting into like just the solar industry. That's what I do for my line of work. People just think, okay, solar panels, you just slap some solar panels up on a roof and like you're good to go. And it's like, well, no, there's a whole lot more to it than that.
Yeah, there sure is. You
should first have to duct tape them to the roof, and then.
Well, you got kind of like Hanss here. You have to have a lot of financial things going on that have to work at very tight parameters of making sure that you have the supply, to make sure that you have enough panels, to make sure that they arrive at the job sites at the right time in the right quantities, having the proper, the sales team or growth team, or I guess in your industry more just like the client facing or what the public perception is, to be able to really make sure that people know what you are and be aware of what you have to be able to offer to them.
So what exactly? So when you say financial analyst, my mind immediately goes to like analyzing startups and companies for like mergers or acquisitions or something. But I take it that's not what you do, unless SpaceX is going to start acquiring a lot of companies.
No, what you described is a better description of my old job, actually. So, for business students, one of the most common routes is investment banking, mergers and acquisitions. So, funny enough, I covered the healthcare industry at my core. So if you think of investment banks, we're talking things like Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan, or in my case, Evercore. We help companies, do mergers and acquisitions. We help them either sell themselves to buyers or acquire other companies that they were interested in. We helped companies, go public. We helped companies raise equity and debt. So that was more along the lines of what I did at my old job, something more capital markets facing. What I do now for SpaceX is much more like traditional corporate finance. So things like I do a lot of like internal spend analysis. So we do a lot of work analyzing the spend of our different engineering departments.
Burn rate.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. So, our lives are governed, my life now is kind of governed by a monthly cycle of forecast and actual spend against our forecast, and analyzing how we can, have cost cutting initiatives, how we can save money, and how the business is doing from an operational and financial point of view. So, it's kind of a difference of something market facing and client serving versus internal and cost focused.
Okay. So you're kind of like the budget guy.
That's right. Yes. So it's definitely an adjustment, but still along the lines of what I did and what I'm prepared for.
Yeah. And so since you've done like startups and business acquisitions. What, like, do you see any like golden opportunities that will be arising or have arisen in the space sector for startups? Where do you see like a lot of growth that's going to be happening in the near future?
Yeah. So, as far as I know, SpaceX has never done an acquisition, and unfortunately, even if one were in the works, I wouldn't be able to talk about it.
Right.
In general, though, like aspects of, there's a lot of pieces. When people think of the space industry, people think of the most visible part, which is the launch services, right? The Falcon 9 taking off, cool videos and stuff like that. But there's a lot of parts that go into it, right? Buyers that go into building a rocket, right? And SpaceX is pretty well known for building more of their materials in-house versus like a traditional aerospace company like a Boeing or a Lockheed Martin. So in theory, if you have a crucial supplier that builds a part of your rocket, and you're tired of trying to outsource this and pay the markups, in theory it may make sense to acquire that company. There are also up and coming pieces of the space industry that didn't exist even 20 years ago. So we had briefly talked about like small sats, CubeSats, and that sort of aspect of small payloads. That's definitely up and coming, especially given the improvement in electronics. So that could be an interesting point of growth as well. So I'm sure that the higher ups at SpaceX keep an eye out for these things, but for me, it's a little outside of my purview, unfortunately. It would be exciting to work on it, though.
Oh yeah. No. Yeah, it's. I think we're coming into this brilliant new age where people can build their own satellites, make their own, and it's I don't know what the costs are for launching small sats in space.
The benchmark I like to use for small sat launch is Rocket Lab. Actually, Rocket Lab is a really strong. In case you haven't heard of it, it's a really strong like new space company that they have the Electron rocket, which is a dedicated small rocket, dedicated launching small satellites. So if you ever look up a comparison of the Electron versus the Falcon 9, you'll see it's way smaller, but serves a different field part of the market.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because like I've heard things. The last guest on the show, he was actually working directly with it. I think he was saying SpaceX was testing. What was it? Where they didn't even have a deployer for their small sats. They just kind of like bounced around. So, colonization. That seems to be a popular topic. What are your thoughts on it? Like a lot of people are like, you have the two groups. It seems like you have the people are like, oh no, this is something that won't be feasible for the next 70 years or whatever. And then you have the people are like, oh, we're going to do it by the end of the decade or something. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So my supreme boss Elon, he's known for setting ambitious targets. That's definitely for sure. But my personal opinion on the future of humanity and the prospects of colonization, I agree that I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I think that we will, oftentimes if you shoot for something, you'll up along the way that you wouldn't have otherwise realized, and that our species as a whole will benefit from it. This I guess kind of falls along the lines of that quote that you hear: "Aim for the moon, even if you miss, you land among the stars." Right? I think it will definitely be a challenge. But I don't see anything that would be completely unsurmountable given our existing technology. Right? All the technology we need to send material in humans to Mars is more or less present already. Right? We've invested in things like the space station, International Space Station, to understand the impacts of long-term spaceflight on the human body. And we've proven that humans can endure a year plus in space and still survive and function, right? So given that a mission to Mars one way is 6 months, right? We should be able to send humans to the surface where they can live and work and survive, right? We have, advanced technologies knowing how to endure life support, right? 50 years ago, we kept people alive on the moon for 3 days in a tiny lunar module. With modern technology and more investment, we should be able to do the same for a larger group of people for extended time. So I think that it's definitely doable. It would be a worthwhile endeavor. And if you look at the challenges facing Earth today, I think that people are right in that humanity is better served with another human outpost on a different planet, right? It comes to the question of whether we see ourselves as an enduring species or as no better than the dinosaurs.
Oh yeah, for sure. And the paradigm, and also I feel that if we have the ability to start maybe with terraforming and like building an ecosystem, even going through all those challenges on another planet, I feel like that would help us immensely on our own.
Yeah, I think so. The technologies that we would develop would be great for solving things on Earth, like climate change, for example, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So definitely challenges, but definitely benefits that would come of it if we decided to make the investment.
Oh, for sure. So on your blog, all the variety you have, like, you got got stuff from like quantum physics to like the financials and stuff.
Yeah, space finance, astrophysics, all the fields that I feel like are impacted by space. So this is a project. My astronomical returns is it's a play on words from my two passions, and it's a project I started around a year ago, back when I was still working at investment banking. Basically, it kind of just started as my fellow analysts would always hear me talking about crazy topics of space and how excited I was, and they told me you should just turn this into something, right? Share it so you can share it and we can learn. So that's kind of how it was born, and I kind of just ran with it and haven't stopped ever since.
Nice.
It's definitely fun to share my passion, and it helps me learn a lot more about space too. It helps me be more knowledgeable. So it's a good pastime.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I actually found kind of a lot of the same in some of the works that I do, where I looked at I write science fiction. But I like to write hard sci-fi, so I like to make it as scientifically accurate or plausible as possible, which requires me doing a lot of research into different things. Like I noticed, like on your blog, you had the ion drives, which are super exciting for me. I love reading on those.
Yeah, that was a ton of fun.
So, like, you learn a lot of things along the way just from being creative, which is really awesome.
I think or is it me? Or are you guys cutting out?
I cut out on that one. Yeah. Could you repeat that?
Who, on me?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness, sorry. I was saying how basically you learn a lot just from being creative and doing research into the thing that you're trying to kind of get an idea of what you're wanting to make.
No, I totally agree. And part of what I actually discovered and enjoyed was a fun part, but also a challenge of writing the blog, is how important English is actually in conveying ideas across. I kind of realized that I once heard, Apollo 11 astronaut Michael Collins talking not about the importance of engineering, but the importance of English, because he said he's listening to incoherent engineers who couldn't express their ideas. So kind of taking that in stride, it's helped me improve my writing in a way that conveys, difficult topics in a way that's fun and concise and approachable to the average person.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Fantastic job.
Thank you.
For sure. I actually read a couple of your articles before the show started, and it was super awesome. And well explained, and you even have links to like some other YouTube videos that kind of better explain or in a visual way of like specifically how the ion drives work, for example. Or talk about the alien pandemics, which is another thing that's really neat that a lot of people don't think about.
Yeah. It alleviates fears of alien pandemic when you realize that there's almost no chance that any Martian microbe could ever infect us because we didn't evolve together. So these common sci-fi tropes, you realize, maybe don't make that much sense anymore. But it's kind of fun to let people's imagination run wild.
Right, exactly.
That's right up your alley, Glavin.
It is. I actually address this sort of thing in my sci-fi setting.
So speaking of extraterrestrials, aliens, what are your thoughts? Like, are you of the opinion that they just simply don't exist, or that if they do exist, it's a bad thing, or if they do exist, it'd be the best thing ever? What are your thoughts on the matter?
Yeah, on whether aliens exist. It's a question that a lot of people have asked me since they know I'm a space fan. It's for me, honestly, it's like many other people who have applied their mind to it. It's not an easy question to answer. I'm kind of more along the camp of, if I had to pick a hypothesis, my best hypothesis falls along the camp of, even if they exist, we're not able to comprehend them. So this is the example I kind of give is that, we consider the second smartest beings on the earth as like chimpanzees, right? And we differ from chimpanzees by DNA percentage of about 2% and we consider chimpanzees smart if they can do sign language and multiplication, right? But try as we might, we could never fully reveal ourselves to chimpanzees, right? If you show them a car or a rocket, they don't comprehend it, right? It's just beyond anything they can comprehend, and they don't realize are. If you think about it going 2% the other direction, right? Maybe some alien species thinks that we're entertaining because our smartest human beings can do quantum physics, but they're just unable to reveal themselves because our feeble minds are unable to comprehend it. So maybe they're here and evident, but we just don't see it and can't understand. That's my personal best guess as to why we haven't. Who knows, right? Maybe they're wrong.
Yeah. No, that's a good. Yeah, I remember hearing this video on silicon-based life forms. Silicon might theoretically be basis for life forms.
Yes, that would be super interesting. I believe that oxygen, or maybe I think oxygen and silicon, I think, are part of the same group on the periodic table. So that would be super interesting, right? They would be chemically similar.
No, I think it was it oxygen or was it carbon?
Or carbon, maybe. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, that would be super interesting, and people consider. Or another hypothesis is that, just as our life forms on Earth are water-based, life forms on other worlds could be methane-based. Taking the example of Titan and Saturn's moon.
That'd be really cool.
That would be cool. They have oceans of methane on Titan, right? Maybe life is formed in those oceans.
Yeah.
So of all the planets and like objects in the solar system, what do you think would be the most beneficial, most interesting to find out, learn more about?
Yeah. I think so. People, Mars always gets all the news and all the headlines, right? But I think that people have very much overlooked some of the moons in the solar system. So, two examples I give would be Europa for Jupiter and Enceladus with Saturn, because both of these moons have large quantities of ice and water, probably beneath the surface, and people don't realize how how much water could be housed in these subsurface oceans. And on top of that, being near these large planets like Jupiter and Saturn, the tidal forces and the radiation produce a lot of heat, right? And there's internal heat on these moons that could potentially be a source of energy that would harbor life. So, if I were submitting proposals to NASA's decadal survey for planetary science, I would love to see landers.
Did you cut out?
Yeah, cut out for me.
Did I cut out?
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. You're back.
Yeah. What was the last thing y'all heard? I was talking about Europa, and y'all asked me to some of the worlds that I think would be most interesting.
Yeah, and you were saying you were talking about Europa and putting a lander on Europa.
Yeah, Europa and Enceladus, I think, would be two great candidates for landers for future NASA planetary science missions.
Yeah, God, that'd be so cool. Why have it? Like, I feel like that's, a bit obvious. Like, has it just not been the budget? Like, what? I understand Mars is important because we want to colonize it.
Yeah,
because it's the closest to Earth. But
yeah,
I guess the question is, like, why haven't more attention been? Another planet I think would be interesting. We really don't know that much about Mercury or Venus or there's just so many unknowns out there.
Yeah. So on the first point, one of NASA's large projects that's under discussion right now would be the Europa Clipper. I don't remember if it's been approved, if it's been approved yet, but basically it's a proposal to use the Space Launch System to launch to do multiple flybys around Europa. I do know that there had been proposals for a lander, but I don't think that was approved. They didn't have funding for that. But there is a Europa mission under works that would use Space Launch System, and I think would launch sometime in around 2025. Mercury and Venus have always been painfully overlooked. The last mission in Mercury was Messenger, which ended in 2013, I believe, when it ran out of fuel. But that was an interesting, good mission. I think Bepi Colombo has been launched by the European Space Agency and is currently en route to Mercury.
Good.
Yep. So Mercury is getting some love. Venus, unfortunately, has been quite overlooked as well. Only a couple. I think only 2 landers have ever landed on the surface of Venus, and both of those were Soviet, not even Russian, Soviet. So that just goes to show how old they are.
Wait,
Oh, wow.
wasn't there like successful? Because I remember, wasn't there like some lander that NASA launched that like burnt up or something that like it only lasted for 2 seconds and then it sent one photo and then.
Yeah, on the surface of Venus. I think it was Venera 13. It's basically, if you look at the picture, it's this huge, super like pressure resistant metal pot, and they sent it, and it worked for it worked for a reasonable amount of time. I think like an hour or 2, and was enough to transmit pictures. But of course, it eventually got obliterated by Venus's horrendous atmosphere. But it's
Wait, so how did the Russians do it then?
how did they the Russians their philosophy of space probes is to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. So they just launch a bunch of stuff. Some of it works, and whatever works they take. So it's kind of they have a very different philosophy, which is sometimes gets results too. Yeah.
That is really interesting.
Yeah.
There's so many like unknowns with the solar system. I think we get so enthralled with Moon and Mars, and which is fair enough. I love Moon and Mars. It's fantastic. But we overlook some of the like other just like we just know so little about the solar system.
I know.
I mean, so little.
As a sneak peek for you guys, the next article I've been preparing for astronomical returns has to do with Uranus and Neptune, because it surprises people that after all this time only one probe has ever reached Uranus or Neptune, and it was Voyager 2 back in the 80s. So since then, nothing has visited Uranus and Neptune, and still the best treasure trove of data we have on these 2 planets is from this 30-plus-year-old probe.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's time for an update.
Every clear picture, all those like pictures you've ever seen of Uranus and Neptune are probably taken by this one probe that's all distant worlds.
I feel like that's just sad. I mean,
yeah, it is, isn't it? It gives you hope for the future, but also kind of sad on how little we've progressed. That's why we need more funding for the space program.
Yes,
for
more
sure.
funding.
More funding.
More industrial. More SpaceX's more. And one of the things I love about SpaceX, I think we were talking about this maybe in the after show, is that SpaceX is sort of like the first space unicorn, and it's starting to pave the way so that angel investors and venture capitalists would be like, oh hey, you can actually make money in space, and it can be profitable, and you can do these things, and it kind of like opens up the door so that other companies can come in and make some significant advances.
Yes,
that's the first step that we all who those of us who enjoy space and finance all want to see for the ecosystem and for the industry, because investor capital is really the basis of new startups, right? People have to have confidence in order to make the investment.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah,
one of the phrases I like to tell myself is that, as I let the engineers debate what the best rocket fuel is, methane, hydrogen, RP1. But as the finance guy, I know that the best rocket fuel is cash.
Wait,
I like
what?
it.
You cut out like right when you said the word.
I said the best rocket fuel is cash.
Yes.
So that's my guiding philosophy.
Hey, he's not wrong.
Yeah.
You should throw that on T-shirts and sell some merch on your blog there.
Maybe one day, but I think when we make astronomical merch, I'll do that. That's funny.
No, that is really cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say too, like, that's one of the things I've sort of noticed about certain scientific advancements, and especially like in the space sector, was like, you can't just do something just because it's cool. It has to be profitable. Otherwise, no one's gonna be able to want to fund it or try and make that project actually happen. So like, you bring up a very valid point there with, you have to kind of pick and choose your battles and do things that are definitely going to be a return on investment, which, I mean, you kind of want anyways, just that we can continue to do more projects along those lines.
Yeah, I know for a fact that one of the engineering philosophies at SpaceX is they have a term that's called minimum viable product.
Yes, MVP.
Yeah, MVP, minimum viable product, where they're like, let's get something that works now. They have a very iterative process as to how they build and design their vehicles. So let's get something that works now. Let's see if it launches. let's proof of concept, and then we can iterate again and again and improve and fail along the way and see what works and see what doesn't, and then we can produce something really great. I think that's a solid philosophy for a company that is a normal company and needs to generate revenue. That's how you have to. I think it's a brilliant philosophy.
Yeah, no, I believe that's taken out of the Lean manual in book, which I love. Love Lean philosophy.
My spirit animal, I like it.
Yes. Yeah, no, I know, I'm such a huge fan of what SpaceX is doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Same.
It's so great. It makes me so happy, like, I mean, the future was not what we were told it was supposed to be, but SpaceX, it's helping us get there, slowly but surely.
Yes. It's exciting. It's gratifying for me to get the chance to work for them every day. I know. It's definitely great to do.
That's huge.
Okay.
So, obviously, if you guys haven't already, check out Astronomical Returns. It is a fantastic blog. Covers all sorts of space topics. Easy to understand. It's great. And of course, there's other. You're on other social media, right?
Yes, I'm on. So for Astronomical Returns, there's the website itself, there's Facebook, and then there's an Instagram page. So Facebook, I post the articles about every week. Instagram, I post every day. So plenty of content for y'all to digest.
And you have some good space memes too, which is always important.
That's right.
It's turned out that all my, except for Discord, all my social media just turns into giant meme aggregators of different kinds.
There are good memes out there.
It just means that you're having fun doing what you love.
Yeah. And of course, we're on Spotify and Pocket Cast, Apple, all the places, and on YouTube. And thanks for Nate for throwing these together and putting them on YouTube. Really appreciate that. And we got a new intro he's been working on. So thanks for tuning in. And no matter what project you're working on, remember to keep it janky to the max.
Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Jaynky to the Max. If you like it, make sure to like the video and subscribe. And if you want to suggest more projects that we can feature, make sure to comment down below, or even better, join the Discord server in the description. We try to stream live every weekend on the server, so make sure to join and grab the podcast role if you want to be there and see it for yourself. Anyway, make sure to stay janky.